talking about free speech, right, is First Amendment, the right to peacefully protest, the freedom of the press, the right to say things that are going to piss other people off, as long as we're not talking about incitement. The classic line, the classic case in law school that you talk about of like where you start with what's a no, right? What you can't you say. Packed movie theater, you can't yell fire in a packed movie theater because it's going to cause chaos, it's going to cause violence. So the question now that we've got is we've got a lot of protests about a lot of things, right? Of course, right now we're focusing on the Israel-Palestine, Colombia, Khalil who got arrested, all of those things. The question is, A, did his speech cross the line in violation of the First Amendment? And B, I think, frankly, more importantly, is the government's response to that in taking him off the street, taking someone who is here legally, proper documentation, taking him off the street with zero due process and threatening to deport him. Now, his lawyers are getting involved in there. They're struggling and they're trying to get some assistance for him.
Is he an alien?
What?
Isn't he an alien?
But he's a legal alien, right? He's got legal documentation.
His name is Khalil. Yeah. He was born in Syria. He's a green card holder. He lives in, I think, New York. He's a Columbia University graduate. But he has been maybe on the forefront of the Palestinian protests for the last 2 years. So right now, he has not been accused of a crime, but he is being detained. He went from Louisiana courts to New York courts, and now he's getting kicked to New Jersey, which is why this is a major issue with the free speech issues.
And again, coming back to New Jersey, but you got a guy who's here legally. I don't agree with the stuff he's saying. I'm Jewish. I support Israel. I want Israel to survive. I think, with the whole Israel situation, they're literally getting bombed from all sides. When you have the October 9th, it's literally and metaphorically. Really, it's, and I don't know what the right response is there. I don't know if what Israel's doing is right or whatever. I don't know. I'm not smart enough for that. That's a massive issue. But what I do know is here you've got someone who's protesting about it, and you've got our government, taking certain positions on things, and you're literally plucking a guy off the street who is here legally, proper documentation, with no due process, no ability. You're not claiming that he violated anything or that he committed a crime, and you're throwing him in jail. If we do this, if we allow this, if we countenance this, then what are we as a country? We need to, there's due process. There are rights that not only citizens, but aliens, legal aliens have. When they're here in this country, you have the right to be here. You have the right under the Constitution of the First Amendment to speak your mind and to say things that other people are going to really vehemently disagree with.
And real quick, Rich, polarizing view with regard to how protesting has been going on for the last 2 to 3 years, or maybe 5 years, or maybe forever in this country, and whether or not it's a peaceful protest or not. So that's your position, correct?
The last 10 to 15 years, just what I've witnessed on TV, through the internet, and social media, it seems like it's not peaceful protesting. It seems like it's aggressive protesting, breaking storefronts, beating up people who don't agree with the popular opinion, things like that. And that's not what the First Amendment protects. Now, again, not all people are doing that. Some people are. And I agree with what Josh is saying as far as the First Amendment protections, but what's being shown on TV is almost being incited as it's okay. It's okay to go throw a rock through a storefront and burn the mom and pop shop down because you don't agree with them. That's not okay. That's not what the First Amendment protects. That's not at all who we are. You want a peaceful protest, there's a way to go about it. You want to speak and have freedom of speech, there's a way to go about it. Can't incite violence, can't incite everything else. Now, however, looking at Khalil for a second, stating that Palestine should take over Israel and that whole thing, listen, I'm not Jewish. I'm Jewish by association by sitting at this table right now. But it's not, to me, I don't see how any of that could be protected speech, in my opinion, when you're trying to say the destruction of a country. Remember, Israel was formed because they were being genocide throughout Europe and throughout the world during World War II. They came and formed the country so the Jewish people can have land so they can thrive and survive. I don't hear anything about Israel going and throwing bombs in another country voluntarily. They are defending themselves from what at least we're told on our news networks. And again, I'm not over there and I don't know the stories over there, but I know what's being told on our news networks, and maybe it's not true. Maybe it's just propaganda for us to back Israel. But let me tell you, Israel's been beaten up the last 6, 7, 8 years in this country, and they're our biggest ally over there. And if without Israel, Guess who's next? They're coming here.
College campuses have been a haven for protesting between the Israeli-Palestine dispute for the last couple of years, right? President Trump's office, I think, is what they're saying now is that maybe Khalil is connected through Syria through some sort of Hamas terrorist organization, and if that is true, then the Secretary of State or the government does have a right to remove Khalil from this country without due process if there's a connection. That's a big
Well,
if.
there's an act from the 50s that gave them that right.
Well, if there's a connection between Khalil and some sort of terrorist organization, then it's a defense issue, right? And then their powers supersede pretty much all due process rights. But there's no evidence of that. And he is born in Syria. He is a legal citizen. You know, he is a graduate from Columbia. You know, the protests on these campuses have been wild, right? Whether they're inciting violence or not is another issue. Whether they're protected by free speech is another issue. But what's going on right now is whether or not Khalil had done that. Is he connected with Hamas? Does he have the right for free speech?
Josh, what's your take on universities throughout the country that accept federal funding that allow I want to say hate speech? How about to attack specifically more recently in news about SWAT stickers going against the Jewish population?
I think that's a loaded question.
It's unloaded for me.
I think federal funding for colleges are important for all colleges, but to base your willingness to provide that federal funding on the college's political affiliations is inappropriate. That's what I think.
Is it the college's political affiliation, or is it the group of students that are on the college campus? Because
that the college is allowing.
I don't think you
to
should
do what
restrict. I don't think you should restrict funding from a university if there's 30 people outside protesting, regardless of what they're standing for. But again,
if the college is not taking affirmative steps to ensure that that's not going to happen, and again. SWAT stickers. If you think that
that's
in your
inciting
opinion,
violence.
But there's also case law that in certain and again, as much as it kills me to say it, guys, because again, as a 100% Jewish guy from Jersey, okay, sometimes, unfortunately, in our case law and in our history, that is not depending on the way in which it is used and presented, it is not hate speech and is not violation of the First Amendment. It is not a violation of the law.
Listen, it kills me to say this, that I'm not even the Jewish one at the table, and I feel like I'm supporting and standing up for the Jewish population more than the two Jews at the table.
Because when you're a lawyer, when you're looking at these things, you have to support the guy who you hate the most. As long as if that guy is not
your mother would love me right now, and your mother would love me and kiss me right now.
Not their beliefs, not what's coming out of their mouth, not their actions. But if what they're doing is not in violation of the law and our history, our long history of First Amendment rights and free speech, freedom of the press, we're attorneys, right? We take an oath. We have to defend the guy who we disagree with the most, as long as what they're doing is not, it's not a violation, right? That's the point. And so, I'm going to defend the Nazi guy if what he's doing, right, is not incitement, right? Because you have to. Because if you don't,
if you choose to,
but if you don't, then it's a slippery slope. And then the next thing coming out of my mouth, someone disagrees with, right? And then it's a First Amendment thing, and then I'm getting hauled off to jail for something because I said something that someone disagreed with.
So if you put a SWAT sticker outside your office, that's okay for you?
Wait.
No. Again,
let's not even get into that.
Context really matters.
Yeah.
And your inability to go with some context and to just spit something out that makes no sense whatsoever sometimes is astounding.
Let me say something. The First Amendment is a polarizing topic. In court, out of court, for everybody. I think it's difficult for universities to determine what is free speech and what's not, which is what the courts are for. So is there hate speech going on? How do you prosecute students that are protesting lawfully or unlawfully if governments and courts are having a problem articulating whether or not certain things are happening? How does now the federal government use funding to try to remove this kind of speech on campuses? I personally don't agree with it, right? Especially if it's an inciting riots and whatever the case may be. Definitely don't support the cause, but the reality of it is how does the university determine? Now, here's the thing. Private universities, federal funding or not, they have the right to do whatever they want. They could restrict protesting, they don't have to restrict protesting. Remember, we're on private property owned by a private institution. It's not a government entity. And if they want to just say, hey, no more protesting on campus, they have the right to do that because they're a private organization. So if they're going to rely on federal funding for certain things, they now have to make a financial decision. And I know, especially dealing with Israel and a lot of Jewish population, there has been a lot of people that have pulled funding, donations, endowments, where I don't want my name on this building anymore at this
That's
university.
fair.
At Harvard.
And that's fair. Yeah.
At Harvard,
At
because
Columbia.
I don't want to
And at
support
Columbia
this,
too.
That's
this sort of
fair.
behavior.
That's a good response.
But again, private institution doesn't have to deal with the federal laws in this aspect. And we're in
No,
this
but they don't
respect.
have the right then to the federal government, hey, we
No,
need
they don't have the
funding.
right to do that. The federal government can also seize their funding.
And let's
right?
also be right. The government does that all the time, right? Whether it's interstate commerce. I mean, literally a while back regarding speed zones, right? And how fast your car is going to go, right? They have linked, right? You're not going to get this federal funding for the roads if you have no speed limit. Right, so you have to have a speed limit of X, or we're not going to give you. It's how they regulate. I mean, it's how they do it all the time. You got to tie demand to restricting federal funding. But in this instance, is it appropriate? Is it right? Is it going to get the effect that they want? I'm not so sure.
Just to circulate about what's going on with Khalil right now, this is not only a First Amendment issue, this is also a habeas corpus issue, which is another major issue in the government. It's when somebody's being held or detained illegally. Again, obviously, it's going to be an argument.
Is it illegal because it's based on the Alien Act of 1952? And
That's the argument.
That's where the power is coming from.
That's the argument that's going to be made. And how is this going to affect foreign policies? And how is this going to overall affect the government right now, especially with President Trump's office dealing with all kinds of foreign issues right now, tying in tariffs, tying in immigration, tying in everything. Now free speech is at issue. Habeas corpus is an issue. I think this is going to be an ongoing conversation and discussion and, frankly, argument on for a lot of people. But again, we're soon to know what's going to happen with Khalil and whether or not he's going to stay detained, be deported, or be able to have his day in court. Which right now I don't think he's being accused of anything. He's just being held.